Next, we go to data types. Data types that we're going to focus on are just integers, floats, and strings. So integers, these are whole numbers from the negative ones to 0 and to the positive numbers. So integers, we can assign variables to them and actually see if the number that we wrote is an integer or not. So let's say number. Okay, make sure that when you write, you start from the start so that you don't indent when it's not necessary. The number is equal to 5. So we want to see if number is equal to 5. We use the type function that is already in our Python. So we actually say print the type, we just write type of number. And then we run. Then we get to see that it's an integer from this. It's an integer. So this type function helps us to see what we are dealing with. So that's it for integers. We can actually even use, let's use a negative number here. Number 2. So if you actually want to use a variable that combines like two things or two names, you use this type of dash to join them together. You cannot write your variables as number 2 like this. Number 2. This is a wrong way of doing it. So this is the right way. So number 2 is equal to -8. And then let's print the type of number 2. Number 2. Make sure that you get it as you write it in your variables. So we run this. Then the class is an integer again. So we can move on to floats. So floats are opposite of our integers. These represent real numbers and they can be in the form of decimals. So let's take a look. Let's just say decimal is equal to 4.567. Then let's find out the type. We print the type of decimal. Then it's a float. The class is a float, so this is a float when you have a decimal. So you can also convert an integer to a float or a float to an integer using this function. You see, if it's a float, it's written the class float. If it's an integer, it's written as int. So you just need to use the int function or the float function. So let's try to convert our number 5. Let's try to convert it into an integer. So let's say now you print and then you need to use the float function. So let's say print float number. Then if we run this, we get 5.0. So it just adds the 0.0 to make it a decimal. Let's try again to do something else to print this decimal to an integer. So let's print int decimal. And then the whole decimal aspect of the number is removed and we just have a whole number, which is 4. So this is it for converting integers to floats and floats to integers. Let's take a look at strings. Strings are denoted by the quotation marks. So whenever we want to change even a number to a string, we just make sure we use the quotation marks. So for example, let's do this. Let's print quotation marks 5, right? And then let's find out the type of 5. So actually, no, let's name it for a variable. Let's just say yp is equal to this is 5, and then let's find out the type. We print out the type of yp. Then let's run this. And then you find that it's a string, and then it's denoted by str. So you find that this 5 is actually a number, but just because we added the quotations outside of the number, it then just becomes a string. But if you just remove them, then it's a float. So you cannot actually say this 5 and that 5 are the same, especially given the syntax that we have used. So we can play so many things with these numbers. We can add the numbers together, the floats and decimals together. Let's try to do that here. Let's print our decimal. Let's just say decimal plus, what was this one? Plus number. Let's just say decimal plus number. Then we get 9.567. So we actually just added the decimal, this is the decimal, 4.567, and then the number, this is 5. So just because we did not specify if we want the answer to be as an integer or as a float, it just gave the answer as a float. So you can actually convert this to an integer. So we just add the int here like this. And then we get our 9, just like that. So let's actually try to add our string and our floats or our integers and see what happens. So print yp plus decimal. And let's run this. Then we get an error. You cannot concatenate a string, not a float, to a string. So you cannot add the string and decimal together. So actually look more into your concatenation just below this. And then let's actually try to add strings together. Our yp, let's define our vw is equal to 7, just to show that strings and our numbers, they work differently. If we add 5 and 7, we don't get the number that we normally get when we're adding numbers. We actually get 57. So let's print out yp plus vw, then we run, and we get a 57, just like that. Okay, so let's go into user inputs.